welcome back again to another episode of the Profitable Sheep and Goat Production Podcast. My name's Leon Gaiman, and I'm here with Lost Creek Wholesale. And I have along my friend Matt Nault from Glenbrook Farms. So we've had some listeners suggest that we put a date with each episode. That way, when they're listening to our podcast and we talk about a certain subject, they can make the connection as to why we feel this is an important topic to discuss this time of the year, or why we are doing this certain operation on our farms at this time of the year. So we're going to give that a whirl. So today is December 24, 2025, and this is episode 51. Today we have our special guest on, Jeff from Hunter Nutrition. How are you today, Jeff? Glad to have you on.
I'm good. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. So I'll try to answer the questions as best I can. Hunter Nutrition specializes in sheep and beef feeds, and we've been around since 1990. I've been in the feed business since the 80s. So I learned something new every year, but maybe I can share some of the experiences to help everybody today.
Sure thing. So, as most of our listeners know, we take some listener questions, and we've had the question come in a couple times recently about distillers grains. And I decided to reach out to Jeff and see if it's a topic he'd be willing to come on and talk about. And interestingly enough, Jeff's initial response, Jeff, do you remember what you told me? I think you said something to the effect of that it's not a good idea, or anyway. So I'm really looking forward to
Yeah,
see what you
might
had.
have been the first sentence.
What was that?
Yeah, I think you're right. That was my first sentence, my answer to you. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm really anxious to see what you have to say. Why do you think it's not a good idea? Is there a scenario where adding some distillers grains to a ration is a good thing, or is it okay? Maybe you could start, Jeff, with what, as a nutritionalist, tell us what is distillers grains, and that probably varies depending where it's coming from. But give us a little background on distillers grains.
Okay. So distillers, and I assume we're talking about dry distillers.
Right.
Okay. Um, both the all my comments are going to be relative to dry or wet distillers. Though distillers grains are a byproduct of corn processing. So corn goes into, you know, a poet plant or somebody like that, and they distill it out. So they're separating the various different particles of corn. Right now, they're taking out a lot of the oil, and that can be sold in the open market for a lot of different uses. Uh, DBGs, dry distillers grains with solubles, are what everybody's familiar with, and those are a kind of a brown colored meal type product, and that's going to have about 25% protein and about 4.5% fat. So it's strictly a byproduct. It'd be considered a protein source, certainly not an energy source or a complete feed. Interestingly enough, I think the reason distillers were popular was when they first came out, they were very high in fat and they were very cheap. They were $50 a ton and they'd be 10, 12% fat and over 25% protein. So all the distiller plants are taking all the oil out they can to sell on the open oil market at a higher value. So today's distillers aren't as nutritionally valuable, and they're going to cost closer to $200 a ton, maybe 183 for dry distillers. So they're not the bargain they were maybe 15 years ago. And we've got to stay up to speed. That if things change, we've got to react. So they're not the bargain. And they have a lot of nutritional issues too.
So could it be that logistics also plays into that cost? Like if a producer was right next door and could team up with an outfit with not much freight in it, that would probably bring the cost down some.
It would bring it down some. For a source of comparison, let's first look at the cost per unit of protein, soybean meal versus distillers.
Sure.
And I've used I've used the cost of buying it directly from a plant at a truckload with only $20 a ton in freight. With soybean meal at about $300 a ton, the cost per unit of protein is 0.316 cents. Distillers at 183, including the $20 freight, that's buying a whole load, is 0.366 cents. So your cost per unit of protein is substantially higher for EDGs than it is soybean meal. So that kind of picks them out of the rations because their cost per unit of protein is higher.
Mhm.
Is that, I mean, obviously that's the scenario right now, but is there times when you see that change where you might say, "Hey, Distillers is actually a pretty good buy," or
It does happen on occasion, but rarely anymore. A few years ago, um, we normally don't change our formulas, but there was temptations to adjust them when distillers were more of a bargain and the cost per unit of protein was okay. The nutritional issues with distillers have us using just a very small amount of distillers in some pelleted rations, and our usage is limited to maybe a couple 100 pounds per ton, to try to pull some of the fat into the feeds that we pellet, then they pellet easier.
gotcha.
Um, Nutritionally, what really bothers me about distillers is they're high in sulfur
Mhm.
and very, very high in sulfur, which is gonna lead to some rumen upsets and ultimately polio and probably death loss. So, I think feeding very many distillers at all with that factor of the high sulfur and the death loss to the polio really should get them out of the rations. Someone might argue, well, if I have low sulfur water and if I watch the sulfur and everything, and boy, if I feed good forage with it, I can still use some. I don't know that it's, worth the risk.
Sure.
I heard more horror stories about, boy, we got on the DDGs and we're next to a plant. We thought they were a bargain. And now I have all this polio. I have all these dead lambs because lambs are already on a high concentrate diet and their rumen's already set up to be a little bit acidic. So you go and add the distillers with the sulfur component being very high, changes the rumen, and then it just, pushes them over the edge.
Yeah, makes sense. And so maybe if it was a big price difference where Distillers were really cheap, you could very carefully use some, but if there's like you're saying right now, if they're higher, why would you even consider it?
Yeah, exactly. I think distillers would have to be half the price they are now to even consider using some cautiously.
Yeah.
Um, all of us that are livestock producers, we really care about our animals, and it's actually more important to us that the animals do well than that we make money. So,
Yeah.
um, I don't think anybody's going to want to set up their flock to have problems, and I think a token amount of distillers would be the most that you could use. Um, it's been a long time since distillers have been at the right price to use. Um, it's just, it's all market driven. They
Mhm.
used to care about trying to get their cost per unit of protein down so that they would get swapped out in formulas. And right now, that's not an issue. There's enough of demand for distillers, um, for other markets that they're just not going to lower this price very much. So actually, I think the distiller's price right now, we're 163 FOB plus we have our $20 freight is really pretty high given, the corn market in the $4 area.
Yeah. Yes. I would like to point out what you said about calculating what it actually is per unit of protein, because I run into that from time to time where people just look at the per ton price and say, well, soybean meal is so much more per ton, um, and Distillers is this per ton. But what's that actually work out to per unit of protein? um, is very important.
Yeah, very good point. Soybean meal will be 47.5% protein, and distillers are 25. So it's, your point's well taken. It's not an apples to apples comparison at all.
Yeah.
Now, if you do have some people that have asked about what DDGs for TMRs, I would offer the same cautions, but there's some other things that bother me about wet DDGs for sheep. They're better suited to cattle feeding. So wet DDGs for sheep and a TMR carry an enormous amount of moisture. So much so that there's two issues. You end up with so much water in your gestating ration that ewes carrying twins and triplets are going to actually break down their stomach muscles because they got a load of lambs and they got a load of water and feed in them. The lactating used on a wet silage heavy in DDG's ration, their problem is a little different. They're still too heavy, but they can't intake enough of the TMR to meet their dry matter requirements, which then sends you into a tailspin of nutritional disorders. So DDGs, I think, you know, a little bit, um, maybe a couple 100 pounds per ton, maybe to pull in a little bit of fat, but a feed stuff at 4.5% fat's not pulling very much in. Otherwise, I don't think they really work into the rations very well with these issues.
So is there any truth to the fact that we had a producer on recently that felt he sees some problems when he feeds too much distillers? Matt, was that late gestation, right?
I don't remember.
I think it was late gestation, and he
Yeah.
he said he doesn't know. Is it a toxin issue? Are toxins more of a risk with distillers, even though they're dry, just because they're going from a wet and at some point you're getting dried down, or what? And any comment on that?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, but distillers generally carry quite a bit of toxins with them. Most of the plants will give you whatever level they're on now. Um, oh, I'm gonna see if I can find where most of them are at right now, but there are some toxins from mold that's from the corn, and they're really in the distillers. And so generally, if we were buying distillers, we get a level of what mycotoxin is acceptable.
Mhm.
Because poor quality corn, does it end up at the distillery quicker than a good quality corn?
Yes, absolutely. Most people, if you've got some corn, that's, you got a bin that's went bad, that ends up at the distillery,
Yeah.
and
And so it wasn't
it's
good enough to
probably
feed. It wasn't good enough to feed animals then we wanna turn around and we make it into a wet, sloppy soup, and then we dry it down and we still wanna feed it. Is that about the size?
yeah,
And now it's more concentrated. Unless they're able to remove any mycotoxins, it would now be more concentrated even.
absolutely right, Matt.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I never thought of that.
Uh, Another
But
question
it's
I had.
interesting when we buy distillers, they always ask us if whatever their toxin levels are acceptable. That's part of the conversation. And we use one plant predominantly where it's low, and like I said, we're 125 to maybe 150 pounds per ton, never over 200 on our regular feeds. So it's just a very small amount. And we could probably just formulate them out entirely.
Mhm.
If the fat is all you're after, surely there's other options for fat. Like, wouldn't corn even would corn be higher what is corn? Book value of corn for fat on corn.
So it'll be less than 3%.
Okay.
Um,
So this would be slightly higher.
yeah. That might be about 2.5, so it won't contribute much. So some of the feed mills started using distillers when they were high in fat, and the distillers would provide the oil for a lubricant to the pellet mill dyed,
Right.
and they keep pulling oil out, and so they're really working distillers are working their way out of the formulations because they don't contribute so much
Mhm.
anymore.
So I just had a mix put together here just this past week, and I told him what parameters I wanted, and I saw it was gonna be pelletized. I saw they put a little bit of oil in. It wasn't much, but I'm assuming that that was for the sake of their dyes, probably.
Yeah, quite possibly, if it's 10 or 20 pounds per ton, there's certainly a nutritional component to adding that oil to your pellet.
Yeah. Yeah. Are are distillers, is there a palatability thing? Like, do they taste pretty good? Like, it smells. Do animals think it, makes a feed taste better? Any comment on that?
From what I've seen, I think ruminants like it, that it so it is palatable to them, and they do like it.
Mhm. It has a kind of a good smell to it, and if you can often, not always, but depending how much is in a ration, I think I can smell it.
Yeah, absolutely, and, so that's a little bit of an appeal, ewes don't bite feed, but shepherds do.
Yeah. So you're saying there's more of an appeal to the shepherds than to the ewes. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, I think maybe.
Well, just as we were talking about this here, I'm thinking if there's anywhere that we would consider using them, if the price was right, it would maybe be in finishing lambs. Like in late gestation lactating ewes, it's just not worth it. But in finishing lambs, we have maybe a little more margin of error. Um, Again, do you have any thoughts on that? And I actually, I would say too, that's where most people are using them is in finishing rations.
So that'll be a double-edged sword. I think you could maybe put a couple 100 pounds in per ton.
Mhm.
I would run the numbers on your ration and see if they're worthwhile. The, thing that would concern me was finishing lambs are on high grain, high carbohydrates,
Mhm.
mm, so they could be the most prone to polio.
Gotcha. Yep, makes sense.
That's interesting that really a lot of times, probably, if you break down your feed analysis, your cost per unit of protein, it's not that really good of a deal, really.
No, it's not. So the issue with the sulfur in the, DDGs is when the DDGs are digested, the rumen bacteria are gonna convert that sulfur to hydrogen sulfide,
Okay.
and then that's where, you get into the problem. Um, a monogastric won't have that issue, but the rumen gives you the issue of basically creating the poison.
Mhm. So distillers, would they still be considered a rumen bypass protein?
I don't recall right off the top of my head their bypass effect, but I think they do have some. There are several soybean meals that are rumen bypass because of their processing. Um, Roasted soybeans and extruded beans have some bypass protein, and those would be far more valuable, particularly in lactating ewes than the first.
From like a milk production standpoint, is that what you're?
Yes, and yeah, and then the bypass protein bypass fat sources like roasted beans and extruded meal. You get bypass protein and bypass fat with the same product.
Mhm.
So you use holder condition a little bit better. So the bypass fat reduces the weight loss of lactation. So it's not going to stop it. You're still going to lose some weight, but it mitigates it quite a bit.
Interesting.
Yeah, I really like roasted beans in a lactation diet, and it doesn't take a lot of them.
And you like them over like bean meal because why?
On the bypass protein and bypass fat, I'll still we'll still end up with bean meal in that diet through the supplement or just bean meal. Um, Couple 100 pounds of roasted beans per ton is about all it takes to make a real dramatic effect on ewe condition and milking ability.
Gotcha.
That's an interesting. So
Can you overdo that? Because I've been using some roasted beans in my TMR rations to reduce my need of protein. So I can feed more corn silage, less baleage, alfalfa baleage, which is what we use for protein. I've been using some whole beans in there. I'm just not sure how much I can get away with using. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, let's see. I'm gonna have to move to the calculator.
Yeah, and I'm not looking for numbers or anything. I'm just curious. Like that's probably a concern at a certain point, right?
Yeah, I think maybe 300 pounds per ton might be the close to the number. So if you were to add 300 pounds of roasted beans and a ton of feed, you're gonna double the fat content. You're gonna move from about 2.5% to about 5.2.
Mhm.
Probably the upper threshold of total fat for a lactating ewe might be 5.3, 5.4.
Mhm.
Um, that's the most that we've ever pushed it, and I worry getting past that.
Yeah.
so I wonder.
And I can if fat is the concern there, I can look what the upper levels are on that because that's something I've been using a little bit, but I wasn't sure how much I can use to increase my protein.
I wonder,
I
Matt,
think it's
how that would.
100, maybe 325. Go ahead, sorry.
That's fine. Yeah. So Matt and I both do a little bit of accelerated lambing. I wonder how that would affect breed up, Matt, because body condition on those ewes
Yeah.
is a pretty big deal.
Yeah. Keep better condition on them. I've never really monitored that, see if we have that in there, if I see better condition on them or not, but that's a good thought. Um,
Yeah, I think if you watch you and if you could split your groups, one with, some kind of bypass fat, one without, I think ewes with bypass fat are gonna be in better condition at weaning, which means they'll breed back better, which could quite possibly give you a better fall lambing if the timing's right.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. So I've had and we're getting off the topic here, I guess, but we've kinda decided the distillers grain is not an option, just don't do it. But while we're on this subject of whole beans, if you don't mind, I've had some guys asking me, so our program for feeding out lambs, our grow ration is a protein pellet and then whole corn and maybe some barley if we have it. And these are commercial lambs we're just feeding out. I've had some guys asking me about instead of using that pellet, just using whole beans as a protein source. And I have some reasons why I don't like that, but I'm wondering just from a nutritional standpoint, we're balancing them to the protein we want, but is that a good use of soybeans? Or are we overdoing it with something? Is there concern there?
And so they wanted to replace whole beans or what again?
They want to replace our program is a protein pellet with which is basically soybean meal, all the minerals, everything we need. But instead of buying that pellet, they'd like to put whole beans in. So it would be whole beans and shelled corn, basically.
Yeah, they're gonna end up with too much fat, I think, and too much expense doing that. And then if they're gonna use whole beans and whole corn, they're gonna need vitamins and minerals and
Yeah.
medication, and you can't put that in as a premix because it will separate out.
Sure. Yeah, and that was my
Process
biggest
the whole ration.
yeah, that was my first problem with that idea is how do you get those supplements in there?
You can't even put a coccidiostat in a whole grain mix very good unless you have a pelletized dequinate or something.
Mm,
Correct.
yeah. Yeah. No, that's and this is the reason guys are asking is if they have their own beans on the farm, they're not paying shipping costs to and from the mill to get them turned into pallets. Um, but they're probably better off just selling them and buying the pellets they need is has usually kind of been my thought on that.
Yeah, because
And they're talking about feeding whole beans that have not been heat processed.
No, they would have been toast. They would have been roasted.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll have guys around here. We'll have guys that'll come out and roast them on farm. So it would be the beans they grew and then got them roasted and are feeding them or looking to feed them.
I think if they really wanted to do that, that their ration will be too high in fat, so they'll probably should watch that. They could process the corn and the roasted beans. They could run through a roller mill
Mm,
and try to get the particle size down to where a premix could be used.
yeah.
yeah. The thing is, they're gonna have to feed too much roasted beans to hit their protein requirements,
Mhm.
and then that's when
Correct.
that's gonna put them too high on the fat spectrum. Yeah.
Yeah.
I always figured there's something that it's gonna put them too high on. I just wasn't sure what that is, but yeah. So fat's kinda yeah, what we're looking at there.
It's hard for me to wrap my mind around sometimes the difference between fat and energy. Like, corn is high energy, but fat is an energy source too, isn't it?
Yeah, fat will be 2.5 times the energy of any of your grains, including corn.
So then theoretically, they could feed less feed. You said the fat's 2.5 times the energy, and we need energy to gain weight, right?
Yeah, so that would be a very feed efficient, um, nutrient dense ration that the animals wouldn't eat lots of, but they would do very well.
But you'd have to keep their bellies full with some roughies to make them happy. Otherwise, they'd be
Hmm.
hollering.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably not a economical option always, but yeah. Anything else you wanted to say yet, Jeff, on distillers before we wrap
Nope,
this?
I think we've covered that pretty good. So
All right. So, Jeff, do you want to just tell us a little bit yet about what you offer there at Hunter Nutrition,
okay,
and
thanks
tell
for the
us
opportunity.
tell us where folks can you got a website, phone number, anything you want to share on that end? Go ahead.
Okay. Um, so you can buy it directly from us, or we have about 35 dealers, so you can buy either way. Um, so we specialize in highly fortified feeds. We really exist to help people because that's what's the important thing at the end of the day. Um, our website, you could go to sheepfeed.com or hunternutrition.com. By all means, give us a call, and one of us, if you have issues, we'll try to help you through them.
And you also sell some premixes that can be shipped around the country pretty easily, don't you?
Yeah, we've got some low inclusion 55, 60-pound premixes, 1 bag per ton, and then some micro premixes that are 10 pounds per ton mostly. And those can go all over the country. We provide the formulas that go with those and the nutritional support.
So basically, somebody can buy that 10-pound premix pack, get it shipped to their door. They have a grinder mixer, something like that on farm. They have their own corn, their own beans, bean meal, whatever. You can tell them that you put this 10-pound premix into X amount of beans and oats, whatever. You can help them put something together to make a complete ration.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. So there you go, folks. If you want to mix your own feed, get in contact with Hunter Nutrition and they'll get you fixed up. And I will put your a link to your website and everything in the show notes so people can find it there and click it and head right over to your website.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Hey, thanks a lot, Jeff. It was I really enjoyed the discussion. We got in the weeds a little bit on some other things, but that's all fine.
It wouldn't be our podcast if we didn't.
If we didn't get in the
Okay.
weeds.
If we didn't get in the weeds somewhere. So sorry about the ambush questions, but you get to talking about things. It's like, oh, I wonder what he thinks about so and so. So thanks for thanks for being a good sport with that.
Okay. Glad to be on. I really appreciate this. So we can do it again sometime.
All right, very good. Great. Thanks a lot. We'll see ya.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Thanks again, folks, for listening to another episode of the Profitable Sheep and Goat Production Podcast. This call is brought to you by Lost Creek Wholesale, your universal feeder distributor and your supplier of top-quality sheep and goat handling and feeding equipment. If you're looking for feeders, lambing jugs, hay racks, tub and alley systems, portable handling systems, you name it, we got it. Check out our website, www.lostcreekwholesalellc.com. Or better yet, give us a call, 717-310-3641. Thanks again, and we'll catch up with you next time.